Welcome to Talk Purpose and Truth, shifting you into higher consciousness. A show that elevates, uplifts, and encourages listeners to grow, heal, awaken, and evolve. Eden and Kim include bold topics, interviews with inspiring guests, experts, and celebrities, intuitive readings, channeled messages, mental health awareness, and hot topics to expand your awareness. Tune in for unprecedented truth, authenticity, on-purpose discussions, and magic.
I think that that's so admirable as a man, because I think for men, there's especially, certain ways of upbringing or culture that it's weak to ask for support, and so many men are not even admitting anything that they feel scared or lost or broken from. And so you leading as example is huge, because it's like giving people permission that it's okay.
Yeah. And he came from such a successful acting career, and he got so humble and realized there's something else he needs, something was missing, and for him to admit that. And I think, Randy, you can probably talk on the same thing. You have the same experience, similar experience.
Yeah, let's hear his take.
Ise, so much of what you said echoed my exact story. It's slightly different, but pretty much the same. I was an actor, and I was in Hollywood, and was born into a Hollywood family. So this is kind of my identity. And I got to the place where, I was struggling with addiction. I was no longer happy. I had taken, it was good. I should have won an Emmy for this, or Oscar of some sort. It's like, I took that role as far and as deep. I mean, I went deep method acting wise, as far as it could go, until I was looking at, it was 3:00 in the morning. I crumpled down in my apartment, and I saw there's two roads. I'm literally going to die, because I almost did, or I'm here for more. And I had no idea what that more looked like, but I knew that I wasn't living authentically. I knew I wasn't being me. And I had an idea from years past of, feeling very connected and having a lot of experiences through meditation and whatnot, where there was at least a reference point. And I said, I don't want the way I'm living anymore. And although I didn't know what that was going to be, I asked for help too. I asked the universe, anyone who could hear me, please help me. I feel like I'm here for more. And I think for me, yes, it's asking for support, but also recognizing that if you're feeling this nudge that you're not living authentically, if that's even coming up in your mind, it's coming up for a reason. Because if you're living authentically, you know that you're living authentically. You can feel it. You feel that you're on track. You feel purposeful. When you're not, things feel so out of balance. You feel stuck. And so for me, it was asking. And then it was also, I guess, having the courage to walk through the complete unknown. I had to disidentify basically with the way that I knew myself, people pleasing, how were others going to view me? What does this mean for me? Could I even survive without doing this? Because the only way that I made money was in this field. But I knew that not living authentically was going to cost me my life. Yeah. So it was having the courage to go, well, I want to live, so I'm going to walk this, even though it's completely unknown.
Yeah. Wow. It's powerful. Yeah. And basically like throwing off any layers that weren't authentically you, and then standing there as you and facing everybody who thought the other person was you, and going, no, this is me. This really is me.
Convincing them.
And one thing I would just add here is also having patience, because that wasn't overnight. It's so easy to talk about these catalyst moments where this was the moment that everything changed, but that was the moment that set change into motion. But then it was a process of, days, weeks, years, and I'm still learning who I am and how to live authentically. Of course, it's way different from then, but it's a process that unfolds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because Ise and I have known each other for 14 years, and we've seen each other go from like kind of the beginning stages of like, oh my God, I'm finding myself and what really is my purpose, and seeing each other grow through it, like come out of it and transform. And so that's 14 years of, yep. Besides whatever happened before that. So it's a process, but it's worth it, because otherwise you're going to be what Randy said. You're going to always feel out of balance and something's missing, and, be questioning everything. So, yeah.
Christopher.
Yes,
Talk
ladies and gentlemen, I love the conversation today, guys. I mean, it's right up my alley. As you can tell, I'm a unique individual, and when I think about the question that you asked, I think it's brilliant, because in my particular experience, I was a suit and tie speaker for many years. I've been speaking for over 20 years, and so I thought when you became a professional speaker, you put the suit and tie on, you go out there and do the triangular pose, and ladies and gentlemen, we're all gathered here today to talk about personal growth. And there was this one particular point where I came off stage at a multi-speaker event, and I'm like, we all sound the same. We all look the same. I'm not this guy. I'm not a suit and tie guy. I'm a rocker. I'm a biker. I speak very candidly, very colorfully, but I'm not this person. And when I think about that part of my journey, this was back in 2013. I think about the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. It was written by a hospice nurse. If you guys have never seen it or read it, it's an amazing book. And in that book, it talks about the number one regret that people said as they were dying was the fact that they didn't live the life they wanted to live. They lived the life they thought they were supposed to live by identifying and meeting everybody else's expectations for who they should be. And I think, to Randy's point and Isa's point, the authenticity is really critical. It's important for us to get raw and real with ourselves and say, who am I? Who am I at core? And what am I really going to stand for? I think it's about values. And I think it's ultimately about legacy, because for me, back in 2008, I was sitting at a funeral and I thought, okay, if I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? And at that point, I figured 10 or 15 people show up and they're going to bring cases of Miller Genuine Draft and Jack Daniels and Bon Jovi records. Like, oh, I remember that time that Chris did that stupid thing or that stupid thing or that stupid thing or that crazy thing. And I'm like, is that really how I want to be remembered? And I went home and I wrote my own eulogy. And from that point, it was really that Chris would have fought for what was right and what was fair. He will have risked forged that mattered, and he'll left the earth a better place for who he was and what he did. And so that really became important to me to identify what my values were and what I'm really here for. Am I here to please everybody else and be predictable? For me, I was a homeless kid when I was from 13 to 18, and I was on the streets. I tried to commit suicide twice. Unfortunately, I sucked at it. And I finally got to a point where instead of like trying to people please everybody else to be successful, I'm just going to be me. And so I in 2013, I took off the suit. I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I got into a mastermind with people who are brighter and smarter than me. And I said, I want to do this brand thing. I want to change. I want to be this kick-ass guy, the no excuses coach. I just want to be me. And 85% of the people in the room, like, yeah, do it. We need more people who are real. And a few people were scared because I talk colorfully and everything else. But in that moment, and to be connected with myself congruently, you guys said congruent, which was one of my biggest words. The fact that you get congruent and you get real with yourself, you're able to strip away all the other bullshit and the other ego identifying things that we're doing for everybody else. And we get really solid with our core and our desire to really connect and be with ourselves. It's not about impressing everybody else. At the end of the day, it's about putting our head on our pillow and saying, was I a good person today? Did I make a difference in the world? Did I move the needle on my legacy? So when I wrote that eulogy and I decided that I wanted to be just known for who I was, that's exactly what I did, even to the point where Les Brown, the great Les Brown, saw me at a speaking convention. I was taking his training and he said, Chris, you're an amazing speaker. I could put you on stages, but I can't do this, the kick-ass thing. And I said, Les, I love you, but I got to be me. And that was a pivotal point. Like Les Brown was huge for me. And he said he could put me on stages, but I had to be me. And I have zero regret about it to this day.
So all of you kind of turned down big offers, probably, yeah, because it wasn't you. It didn't feel authentic to you.
Yeah, huge example. And I think it's giving people permission that it doesn't always have to be about the money or the status or what should be. It's what is my heart saying? Like you said, does it feel congruent to me? I always say, does it make me feel alive? Does it feel aligned with me? Does it feel right in my heart and soul? Yeah. And if not, if you can't say yes, hell yes, then there's something, what's missing, do I need to not do it? Do I need to change something? And I think that it's very brave. All of you are now living congruently and authentically,
Amen.
Huh. Yeah. Ise, hopefully are you able to talk?
Are you hearing me
checking
clearly,
in again?
or am I breaking up?
We hear you.
We hear you
Okay,
well.
beautiful. I'm good to go. Yeah.
Okay. So a little bit more about that. How do you help others now that you've come into your own? How are you helping others to get to that place?
Yeah, it's a lot what I believe Scott just said, about living congruently. I believe it's really all about that, and like we're all kind of in our own world inside, and it's taken me a long time to put myself together so I could really just be me and be congruent with me. That takes the word bravery was mentioned just a few minutes ago. It takes bravery, it takes courage to sacrifice what appears as safety or money or things that seem a guarantee, to go with something that can be unknown, which is, something inside of you, or like what Kim said, to follow your heart or follow what feels good. That can be a very scary thing for a lot of people. So figuring out, first of all, like that is, because most people don't even know what turns them on. They don't even know. I didn't know. Most of us are going for so many things that we think that we're supposed to be doing, the life that we think we're supposed to be living, that we don't habitually tap into what our heart says, what our feelings say, what feels good, really, what we used to do when we were younger, like what our passions are. So many of us are so disconnected. I don't even ask someone, when I meet someone, I don't ask them, oh, what do you do? I'll say, oh, what's your passion? What do you love to do? What do you love? I start off with that, because then that's like, oh, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. And so like, just, as a first step, it's really discovering what do I enjoy? And like, what you said earlier too, like, why am I here? So like writing a eulogy, I mean, that's so key, because, living for the end, right? Before we return back home, like, why did I incarnate in this body? Did I come here just for a job, or did I come here for a higher reason? Why did I come here? Who am I? What am I here to do? What do I enjoy? How do I like to serve? Right? And so we start to get this inner world built of, well, I think I came here for a reason, right? And you start to have an idea, how do I want to be remembered? What would light my fire on leaving something behind? How do I want people to think about me? That starts to give us like a framework, like a context for the type of life that we want. And then we just start to go to like narrow that in. Writing a eulogy is an amazing exercise that we do as well too. Getting an idea on what's your target for the end of your life, right? What do you love? And then how are you? And then you start to like chunk down and really interweave it into your days. Like how do you get up? How do you go to sleep, right? And you start to like map all that together, and really starts to build like an inner infrastructure that you can actually rely on and count on, of happiness, of courage. And like brothers said, you're always growing, you're always figuring it out. But once someone gets connected to that world, first we help to build that world, which is theirs alone, like customize their own world within. And once they get connected to that, then they continue to do the work, because you always get to do the work and to continue to craft it. And that's the beautiful art of living life in that way, living life in integrity, on purpose, and congruent with yourself. So that's what we do with the coaching program for the men, and as well for couples and for women. But I really focus on just men for right now.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love how two things really stood out to me, and I'm going to start doing that. What's your passion? What do you love to do? And I wondered why. I thought it was only your charisma, you say, that all these people were like wanting to talk to you at that event we just went to, but it's because you said, what's your passion? And they wanted to talk about themselves. And I love that you said customize the world within, because that is so beautiful, because that's the issue is people are seeking outside and inside's going crazy. And if they learn that they have to heal and tune and balance the inside first, I love that. So thank you.
I have a question for Randy, kind of going backwards a little bit, but it just made me think, listening to all of you talk, made me think of this. When you decided to go sort of, I don't know if it's really considered this, but go against the family legacy, what you were born into, and change your life and do what was best for you. Was there any resistance from people who had expectations on you to follow, what your father built?
I mean, the biggest resistance was within me, because I was anticipating and thinking about everyone else's resistance. I bumped up against a little. No one said, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're crazy." Except someone who worked at a pet store. I was getting my dog food, and I said, I'm moving out of Los Angeles. I'm moving up to Portland, Oregon. And he was young, I think an aspiring actor. And he said to me, he looked at me and he said, "What?
You have it all. Why would you move away?"
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't comprehend. And I had this very surreal moment, because I didn't walk around thinking, oh, people, I mean, we never even had a conversation about who I was or what I did, but I just had this surreal moment where he was looking at me perplexed. I was looking at him perplexed. And it was this, wait, you're looking at me thinking that I should do something? And I just thought, oh yeah, now I definitely have to get out of here. And
Wow.
yeah, there was some resistance. But at that point, it didn't matter. The train had left the station, because I had made the decision already. I have to live this way. And that was it. So yeah, I guess I would just say it was the anticipation of how I thought people would react. But I was a recovering people pleaser. And so that was very, very difficult for me to share with others what I was choosing, even though it could be uncomfortable. But I did it anyway.
Yeah. And look at you now. Look at all of you.
Like all of you guys too, right? I mean, I think we all had to kind of choose that path somewhere along the way. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, quickly, Eden and I mean, I'll let you go first, Eden, but you too, you kind of struggled in becoming fully in your purpose, right? And it took you some guts and some time.
Yeah, because there's such a stigma around someone who calls themselves a medium. And I didn't have a big career before that, so it's not like I left something to become who I am. But yes, I didn't have a lot of acceptance around me, and people would look at me funny, and when they started to find out, and that was very uncomfortable for me. It took years to get kind of to not care anymore what people thought. And then once I did stop caring, people accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Amen.
As long as you own it, then there'll be remnants of people maybe, but it doesn't matter. They almost they ping off of you. And yeah, for me, I was doing acting and modeling, and I was singing in a group, and I was teaching special ed. And just started doing readings, intuitive readings and life coaching on the side, thinking it was a hobby. And then when I met Ise in 2008, and I went through this NLP course with New Yorka, it just gave me a breakthrough. Oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be doing any of that stuff. I'm supposed to be coaching and speaking and whatever. And so I made that decision that year, but I didn't really fully step into it until about a year and a half, 2 years later. And then it took me a while to really own the intuitive reading aspect for the same reason. I was like, oh, I'm going to be looked upon as weird. It's too out there. And now I feel like I'm more just totally comfortable with being out there, and I don't give a, what. So it takes time to step into that and be bold that way. And now it doesn't even feel bold because you're just you.
Yeah. To end this and go somewhere else, but they're not running to the right thing. How do you help people to understand, what's authentic, what isn't?
That's a great question. I think for me, in thinking about this, I think about what we've gone through in the last couple of years with the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of people have had to rethink who they are, what they're about, what their job, what their roles, what their identity is, how they interplay with society, their family, their friends, and especially with themselves. One of the things I've done over the pandemic was just gift people coaching sessions, like just to get them through, especially on the 6-week lockdown. I was just putting it out there. Like, if you need a coaching session, I'll be happy to do it. No sales, no nothing, just my way of giving back to help people get through this trying time. And after I did about 200 of them over the last couple of years. And the one thing I started seeing most of all, and it was kind of weird, because all of a sudden I just was like, I heard this whisper saying, ask this question. And so I would ask people, I'm like, I'm going to ask you a question. We're on Zoom. And I said, I want you to tell me the immediate answer. Don't really think about it, but tell me your gut answer to this question. And I thought it was lame that I was going to ask this, but I'm like, do you love yourself? Yes or no? And 75 to 80% of those 200 people looked at me like, yeah, well, I'm not, not sure. And so I started seeing a pattern. I'm like, because all for me about no excuses coaching is like getting to the root to the problem. I don't want to deal with symptoms. I want to get to the root. So a lot of that really involves with me working with a customer, working with a client, is taking them back and like really seeing what their perspective is about their past, present, and their future, and really kind of identifying who they were from 0 to 5 and what types of beliefs and conditioning went on into their lives and what they're thinking about. And ultimately, like we're talking about here, is like into that realization, like, okay, I've been that people pleaser. I've been doing everything for everybody else. And then ultimately we spend more of our energy trying to help other people or get their validation, their significance, and everything else, because we didn't have that as kids, that we get lost. And so when I asked them this question, I found out that a lot of people didn't love themselves. It started to occur to me that when we start to love ourselves and we forgive ourselves and have empathy, and that realize life is happening for us and not to us, and that we get an opportunity at any particular moment to sit there and say, wait, I can see this from a different perspective and a different angle. And, we've been talking about congruency and values and everything else. It's really ultimately about, deciding that you're no longer going to tolerate those excuses from yourself, and to be able to really identify with your core exactly what it is that you want to put out into the world. And so by this, asking people like, how do you hydrate? How do you sleep? What's your nutrition? What's your exercise? Just having them focus on that for a period of 6 weeks, just focusing on that alone. People came back to me in huge numbers like, wow, Chris, I didn't realize how poorly I was treating myself, how poorly I was taking care of myself. Because if you don't have that foundation set, then you're operating from a lack mindset. So getting people to really take care of themselves and honor themselves, and to have that ultimately, that for me at least, I think about it this, I think I'm here in this world to provide something, my zone of excellence, my zone of genius, if you will. And ultimately, when my time comes to go back to wherever I'm going, that there's going to be a checklist, and they're going to say, Chris, you were meant to achieve these things in your life. When I have that meeting with God, source, maker, whatever it is, I want to be able to say that I checked those things off, that I didn't waste my time. So it's really about getting congruent with ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and eliminating the stuff that doesn't no longer serve us. And that takes bravery and courage and guts. And that's what I do, is I get people to walk through that and be able to stand up for themselves and realize that they don't need to tolerate anything else. Because I'll ask them the question, I'm like, when did it become acceptable to be mediocre? And like, it's not. I'm like, okay, if it's not, then stop acting like that.
Yeah. Good. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, Randy. So can you tell us more about how you coach people and what you do, as well as how do you personally connect with your soul?
Oh, it's a two-parter. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of coaching people, it's really about looking at, because people do come and they're struggling with something. They're uncomfortable enough to reach out and say, hey, I need some support around whatever they're going through. And then it's looking at what's the perception of keeping them stuck, but also why is that here? It's inviting them in closer to go, hey, this is actually a completely wondrous moment, because if you're here and this is coming up and you're getting that nudge to even reach out to get support, and we've all talked about this on here today, that is the turning point when someone makes the decision, I want to be different. And I know that if they're reaching out to me, or likely any of you, right? Same thing. If they're reaching out, they're ready.
Mm-hmm.
They're ready. So it's finding what is the life that they want to create. And in a very distilled way, I'm doing this for 15 years, and it always drove me crazy when I'd sit in rooms of 500, entrepreneurs and coaches, and everyone's writing their message. I do this so that I can help people too. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know exactly. It was always so hard for me because it felt very limiting to say what that is, even though it's important. And at one point I just asked so many of my clients, past, present, I said, what did you get? And the feedback that I got was, you helped me love my life through loving myself. You helped me love my life through loving myself. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, okay. And then I started to ask, so tell me, what did we do? What was even the work, right? What was your experience? And there was so much that people, just like Chris said, so much that people were holding on to, an old way of viewing themselves, seeing themselves through family members' eyes in a very critical, judgmental way. So hurtful, that aren't serving people anymore, being able to adjust the perspective and heal. And I'd love to tell you that there's an exact formula for that, but there isn't, because I work very intuitively, and it's depending on the person who's in front of me, what they're presenting and what's going on. Then we sort of go in together, like triage, and say, okay, what needs work and where is that? And it's a completely co-creative, dynamic experience. And so, that's the way that I help people update from past to present. And I love what you both said about this future work is not future tripping, not having everything in the future figured out, but using the future to identify, who is this person that I want to show up as? Because most of the time people don't even have a reference point. You say, you're going to live the millionaire lifestyle. People want all this money. And then they go, I don't even know what that feels like. I have no reference point, right? The life that I want to create, what does that feel like? How would you stand? How would you talk? How would you get up in the morning? How would you hydrate yourself? Like Crystal, how would you treat yourself? How would you treat the other people around you? So it's using the future for that person to figure out, oh, okay, that's the reference point. That's who I want to become. That's how it feels. And then showing up like that every day.
Bravo.
Love it. And yourself, you didn't say the answer to the one about yourself.
Right. What was the second question now?
How do you connect with your soul?
Nature's huge for me. Being out in nature, which really means that I'm making the time to slow down enough. So nature is really just the symbol for me to slow down enough to commune with my soul. Meditation is great. And one of the biggest things, to be honest, is working with other people. I love service, and I really do believe that, but it is self-serving in the sense that I'm probably at my best when I am coaching others, because there are a lot of times that someone will say something, and in that moment, I don't have an answer. And I don't even know where to go or what question to ask. So I will literally pause, close my eyes. I'm sure people think I'm nuts. And I'll say, just give me a moment. And I will pause. Sometimes it'll be a minute-long pause. But I will be shown a picture or an image or something. And I'm thinking, what? I'm gonna talk about a red little box with a bird coming. What? And then a question will come and an image will come, and I'll share that, and it unlocks something. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's communing with my soul, because I'm getting guidance in that moment, and there's nothing that's more satisfying than being a part of that when that can come through.
I get that.
Yes, me too. All those. I love all those.
All the things.
Yes. Yeah.
So Ise, can you also answer that question? How do you connect to your soul?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question. I wanted to answer that question. You know, one interesting way that I connect with my soul that I found throughout the years that was sort of a curveball was by having really authentic conversations and saying things that normally you wouldn't say, or that we hadn't said in the past. That's one way. Being still, being quiet, definitely meditation, definitely exercising, and putting my mind in a place that I'd like to focus on something deep within me as I'm moving my body. I also like to use the healing properties of plant medicine as well, be it ayahuasca or mushrooms or other sacraments like that. Those are amazing ways to not only connect with your soul, but in doing so, clearing out a lot of the gunk that prevents you from connecting with your soul. So I would say like those are some of my main things that stand out right now. But really, one way that I connect with my soul is maybe kind of weird, is that I close the shade of my eyes. That's what I call it. I close the shade. So typically I could be in a really busy place, like an airport, like when I'm traveling a lot, and I'll be walking through an airport. What I do is I'll shut down my eyes. I'm walking down those big long hallways, and I'll close down my eyes. I'll close them down about 8/10 of the way, 9/10 of the way, so I only see about 6 feet in front of me down below. And so I close the shade, so I'm not taking in the information from around me, and I literally go into my own little private area as I'm walking through the airport. I feel like no one can see me. It's private. I'm not getting any of that information, and I'm walking like by myself, and I feel like I'm cloaked. I feel like I'm invisible, and that's really a fun thing to do that I would highly recommend for anyone who wants to connect with themselves, but they might not have a lot of time or space, is just to close down the blinds.
I like that. It sounds good for people who because I am kind of an introverted extrovert. Like, I'm very extroverted, but I'm also introverted in certain ways. I've become the more intuitive I've gotten, as probably you guys too. But sometimes airports or Las Vegas or something like that will get me overstimulated. So I love that tip, because I have not tried that, like to just kind of get yourself out of it and not taking it all in. That's cool.
I think that's helpful for anxiety. Probably. Yeah. One thing you said, Ise, that stuck out to me is when you said clearing out all the gunk that prevents you from connecting to your soul. I think that is key right there for everyone. That's like the work right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And whatever it works for you.
Yeah, there's so many things so many dimensions that gunk builds up on, that's sort of the fun part. And that's one thing I'll just add to that conversation is that, and one thing that I'm most proud of and I also do with the coaching is cleaning up our messes. I like to be Mr. Clean. Mm-hmm. And there's a great superpower in being able to look at the so-called mistakes, the errors, the misunderstanding, all these mess ups, the soil, where we've soiled our life, and to really look at it and to transmute it, to Because with every mistake, with every error, with every soiling, with every misunderstanding comes also the wisdom along with it as well. It never not comes with it. So when we look at those things and we clean up our mistakes, when we see what's really there, there's always a spiritual lesson, and there's always wisdom to be extracted from those areas in our life. Usually we don't look at those areas. Usually we say, oh, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to think about that. We're throwing away so much wisdom. But when we have the power to clean those things up, to say I apologize, to say I was wrong, to just look at it, to be able to clean those things up, and you'll get the vision. I like to say from the first eye, you'll get like divine sight. You'll be able to see more of what's really that situation is about, and you'll get gifted for the work. You will get gifted for doing the work and cleaning that up, and you will become untouchable. When you clean up your situations, when you clean up your mistakes, when you clean things up in your life, when you clean up things that you've destroyed, relationships from being unconscious or whatever, when you clean things up, you get a superpower and you become untouchable because you don't have to look over your shoulder ever. You clean up your skeletons in your closet. And I think that's one of the imperative things to do.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's so
I want to clap.
bold. Yeah, me too. But you know what? I think that's so brave for anyone listening, because there's so many people who use it kind of as a crutch or something to run from or repress and say, yeah, I have anger, I have guilt, I have issues, I have shame, I have whatever. And they just like constantly say that as their identity instead of going, hold on. Okay, let's dissect each thing, heal from it, do whatever I need to do to learn from it, to be able to not have to react to it anymore, to more look at it like, all right, you know what? There's stuff like I can look at stuff in my past and go, yeah, I did that. And that was, something that I did on my path, but it is the past. It created wisdom, learning, non-judgment, the ability of me being able to help others now with that knowledge. And it was just part of my life's path. And sometimes we have things that may be labeled as difficult, challenging, ugly, whatever. But if we can get to that place of looking at it in a more rising above way with almost like indifference, just like, okay, yeah, this is something that happened that I learned from and I used as a tool, then we don't need to keep it as our identity of guilt, shame, anger, whatever,
Amen.
I just want to say one thing to button that up real fast because it's so key. I am only able to serve at the highest level because I've cleaned up my mistakes and all those things we just talked about. That is what's given me all of what I have to offer. Had I not cleaned that up, I wouldn't have anything to offer. And it gives so much in cleaning that up.
Yeah. And everybody's nodding.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, we'll go to you in a sec, but I wouldn't just say this, that also prevents us from being authentically happy and fulfilled if we don't clean our stuff up. And it doesn't mean you have to take the blame and say, even apologize to people. And it's not like mistakes you might have done to hurt people or made to hurt people. It's also clean our stuff up from within, things that we have from our childhood. There's a ton of it that's all about cleaning up. Chris, what do you think?
1,000%. I mean, what you guys are, you're preaching to the choir right now. I mean, we're all on the same wavelength. And I think, like I said before, when you look at things as life is happening for you and not to you, and you're able to look in the past, like I'll ask people like, when did you learn the most? When things were easy or when things were challenging? Inevitably they say when things were challenging. I'm like, okay, so if you have an appreciation for when things get challenging and you look at it from the perspective, what am I supposed to be learning from this? What am I supposed to be growing from this? And then how can I be able to use this to further my life down the road and help other people through that? You start to have a different perspective and seeing that there's growth in those opportunities, like the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell story. It's on YouTube. It's like an hour and 23 minutes. It talks about the fact that we go through these ebbs and flows, these peaks and these valleys throughout our life. And to Ise's point, the sooner we stop running from that, I ask people like in part of my intake conversations, I'm like, what are you running from? And they're like, wow, I never really thought about that. And usually they say they're running from themselves. I'm like, okay, what is your addiction? What is your short-term gratification that you constantly go to? TV, Netflix, shopping, gambling, sports, sex, drugs, rock, whatever it might be. I'm like, okay, what is it? The deeper thing that you're running from?
Thank you for listening to Talk Purpose and Truth podcast. Find out more at talkpurposeandtruth.com. And follow us at Talk Purpose Truth on Instagram and Facebook.